The following is a special presentation of Tony Curry Radio.
Hey, welcome back to another award-winning rendition here. We call it an episode, rendition, podcast, show. It runs on TKR. It's pretty much all those things. He is Mark Ingram. He is the UAB Athletic Director. And, of course, go Blazers go, man. UABsports.com for everything you need about the UAB Blazers. There must be something going on. I tried to get on the website a couple times this morning, and it was locking up. So you guys must have just a ton of stuff going on. When a site locks up, that means there's so much going on, it just can't contain itself.
Yeah,
You want
to part of it.
You want to share a couple of things that are going on there at the UAB Sports campus down there? What's going on?
Yeah, you know what? Last week we graduated 770 student athletes.
Wow.
Which is the biggest number we've ever had in one particular semester. Spring semester is always bigger than August and December, but we've never, that number is usually like 40, 45. Yeah, we had 70 graduates.
Wow, that's great.
I attribute that, I guess, to all the transfer rules and that we're getting in older people. You know, we don't have as many freshmen and sophomores as we used to as much now. Juniors and seniors are kind of an older department. That can vary team to team, but I think that's part of it. Nonetheless, 70 graduates, which is great, and had all the grad schools and undergrad students. That's all held in Bartow Arena, which is great. And we also hold 7 different high school graduations, which are coming up from around the area, which is exciting. Baseball won its series this past weekend against Charlotte, which was terrific.
Awesome.
And so yeah, we're still playing. We've got softballs at East Carolina this weekend, and then they go to their conference tournament. We got a few more baseball lags behind softball by a couple of weeks, and still got some track athletes competing. So we still got some things going on.
All right, fantastic. Great stuff. Again, UABsports.com. You can check out all the information. It is up to date, even when it's not locking up. That just means there's just so much information on that thing. Get on there, and you'll be surprised by all the information on there. Talk about transfers. I haven't really heard too many people talking about this, but when you talk about APRs and you talk about numbers, that obviously you're part of this. What's it called? The Champions Trophy, the thing that puts the smarts and that puts the APR and all these things into some type of trophy for college sports, and who's the best. You know what I'm talking about? Whatever that thing is.
Oh, the Directors Cup.
Yeah, the Directors Cup. Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't have anything to do with school. That's all just how do all your teams compete, and it's mainly in NCAA competition. So if you finish second in soccer in your conference, you don't go to the NCAA, you don't get any Directors Cup points. They have a point system.
Yeah.
Where some of these schools like Stanford, North Carolina, Ohio State, they do really well because they've got so many sports. They're getting points, collecting points for fencing and water polo and stuff. Not that they're not doing well in other areas, but there's certain things where
I don't know who you have to answer to as far as in your academics and how many people that you actually graduate every spring and fall. When you got people coming in though and spending 2 and 3 years at a school or maybe a UAB and decide maybe they're a junior or senior year, maybe they're going the 7-year route and they're transferring just so they can continue to play their sport of choice. How does it play into your graduation numbers and how that works? Do you get credit for that if obviously they spend the majority of their career at UAB?
Well, you don't get credit as far as like our graduation rate. You don't get credit, but you get credit for the APR if they go somewhere else and graduate and stay eligible. So it's a complex formula that works into all that. And fortunately, the Committee on Academics within the NCAA structure, which is other, people like me, other ADs, other compliance people, whatever, they recognize that with the new transfer rules, something's got to be adjusted for APR, and they've made some adjustments, mainly being that the key is you've got to be eligible when you transfer. You have to be eligible at the place you're leaving and meet the eligibility requirements for the place you're going.
Gotcha.
And those are the main things. And so there's oftentimes, and we've had players that wanted to transfer, but they weren't academically eligible and they couldn't transfer. Now, if they stay here, that say it's this time of the year and they're not currently eligible, but they have the summer to fix that.
Yeah.
So they can get eligible for the next fall and do. But in the moment, during the transfer moment, they are not eligible. Therefore, they are not permitted to transfer.
Do you have that a lot? I don't think that people talk about it. It's like almost get a credit, right? It's like you really want to buy the house, but you're just not credit available for it. Do you have people that want to transfer, but then they find out their GPA is not where it needs to be?
Oh yeah, definitely. And that doesn't happen a ton, but it's
Yeah,
happened. It's not uncommon.
yeah.
And it's not every year, but we've had it, and less now than say during the time we reinstated football, where we just had, we had players coming in. You remember, I mean, this is 9 years ago.
Mhm.
We had a situation where we only had like 10 or 12 people from the football team, and the 2014 football team only had like 10 or 12 people on it left that did not transfer out. But there were some of those that didn't leave because academically they weren't eligible to leave.
Mhm.
And some were like, man, I'm about to graduate after summer or next fall, heck with it. I'm not, or, and I didn't play here much, so I'm just trying to graduate now. Um, so we were bringing in people from all over the place and recruiting during a time when you're trying to get kids that you're not going to play for 2 years was tough. So sometimes you might bring somebody in who was eligible to be here, but maybe not super focused on academics. And so we've had that, but we've sort of worked through a lot of that. That doesn't, again, that's not to knock those kids. It was just that we had to take a really broad approach on trying to get people here and early on, and we've been able to kind of narrow that down to people that you might more traditionally recruit.
Yeah, we got some rock and roll trivia coming up here in a few minutes. A couple of really, I know how much you love classic rock, and I found a couple things that will just blow your socks off. I had to share it to figure out some way to talk about it on the show because we do every single week. Sometimes we talk about our favorite guitar solos, or last week we did our drafting of our favorite rock and roll band, which was fantastic. We had a lot of people, info at TonyCurryRadio.net, that had responses to a lot of the stuff we put out there. One of the reasons I love having you on, I love having coaches on too. We had Trent Dilfer on, and of course we had Coach Andy Kennedy. He stuck his head in a couple weeks ago. We love X's and O's, and I love all that stuff. Very topical, obviously. If we're 3 or 4 days removed from a game, it's kind of difficult to talk about older games, but you kind of pulled a curtain back on everything that happens in athletic sports. And right now there is just a ton of stuff going on with the
Yeah.
NCAA and college, and it's happening really, really fast. And it's happening behind the scenes really, really fast, which makes me feel like any morning I could wake up and get on ESPN.com or UABsports.com and see this huge. I mean, I'm talking. They're calling it. Greg Sankey called it seismic. I mean, we're talking tectonic plate stuff here. This is stuff that's going to be changing the way that college sports look forever. And of
Mhm.
course, some people right now may be scratching their head, going, "What are you talking about?" Of course, we're talking about the Power Four conferences or the Major Four, trying to figure out some type of way to have a revenue share that they're not sure where the money's going to come from and how it's going to be distributed yet.
Yeah.
And this all in lieu of the antitrust lawsuit, which is coming out in 2025. It's all going
Yeah.
to be part of some type of mass settlement.
Yeah.
So, and because right now, at least the number I saw, $4.2 billion could cost the NCAA because you have well over 7,000 athletes are going to be part of this big lawsuit that's going to be whether we should have gotten paid, it's going to be retroactive, blah, 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 blah. What's going on? Well, you're an athletic director. What shows up on your desk every morning, or what are you hear? What are you hearing? Because you're as close to this as anybody.
Yeah. And what it is uh, for me to say that it's ridiculous, and I do think it is. Here's what I think is ridiculous is it's just going back a certain number of years and saying this group of people were not permitted to benefit from their name, image, and likeness, and we're going to sue as a result of that. Well, why would we look? I don't agree with that, but why would we only go back, 3 years or 5 years,
Mhm.
10 years? Well, I mean, nobody else has in the history of sports, so maybe we should go back and pay everybody. That's it.
Yeah.
And why is it only limited to the Power Four conferences? I mean, UAB kids couldn't do it either. Why shouldn't they get some of that money? And that money is going to ultimately come out of my budget and all of our budgets and the revenues from the NCAA. And if those revenues get hurt, we currently get revenues from the NCAA. So that just means even if they're the ones that write the check, that means my check that I'm going to get from them is going to ultimately be smaller because I got to cover this other check. So
Mhm.
it's just kind of hilarious how class action lawsuits go. From my view, is it should be an all or none proposition to me. If it's really a thing, why wouldn't we be going back to the beginning of time? Every living athlete, me included, should get some 18-cent check out of this. I don't know.
What are you hearing the Power Four conferences?
I'm sorry. And by the way, so many of those kids, just like now, while they would have been eligible for that money, they wouldn't have got any money.
Yeah.
If they could have done it 5 years ago or 10
Sure.
years ago, they weren't going to go out and hustle for that money. They don't hustle for it now. Why
You
would they
mentioned-
hustle for it then?
You mentioned a couple weeks ago, this all started with the calling of autonomy in college sports when the Big Five went off, and now, of course, the Big Four because the Pac-12 fell apart. But who from the Group of Five or from the smaller schools are sticking their nose in on these meetings, or are they? It sounds
No.
like it's just the Big Four big dogs, and they're going to relegate, and the rest of you are just going to have to deal with it. It's going to be difficult because we've gone through this over and over and over again. There isn't that much money in sports. It's regulated for different sports as long as you want to keep your 18 to 27 sports per institution. It's going to be difficult. There are going to be things cut. Yet it seems like Mark, the money's always found. I don't know where this money's. And are we talking about the major universities, the Ohio States, the Alabamas, the Auburns, the world sharing their revenue with smaller schools, or are we talking just a major squeeze out of some of the smaller schools? I mean, what are you hearing?
I mean, they're trying to figure that out. There's no answer yet. I think they're trying to figure out.
Do you think they're trying to do what's best for everybody or just themselves? I mean, listen, sports are better because we have all the people. I mean, everyone, it's all inclusive. It is all inclusive.
But autonomy changed that. First of all, it cut half the competition out and said you're not in.
If you were just talking college football,
And now that's shrinking with the new CFP contract, which starts in 2 years, that where the Big Ten and the SEC get more money than even the ACC and the Big 12. So they're even going to separate. The SEC and the Big Ten are going to separate from the ACC and the Big 12.
Who the hell picked? I can see the SEC, I can, but who decided the Big Ten was going to be part of this?
Well, the flaw in it all, Tony, is that if you look at the NFL, when they had a chance back in the 70s to do similar things, like the LA market is bigger, the Chicago, the Dallas, the New York City market were bigger than, say, Buffalo, Green Bay, Kansas City. These markets were smaller than those markets. They could have done some sort of tiered thing then, but they did not do that. And the reason they did not do that is that they understood that it was important for Buffalo and Kansas City and Green Bay to be good. And so they made a decision as a collective group, before letting greed get the better of them, that all TV money will be shared the same, and any NFL marketing money will be shared the same once the expenses are covered to run the league and whatever, the league office and whatever that run the Super Bowl. But then they all get the same. So, but then let's say Green Bay, if their stadium is bigger than Kansas City or has more suites, if Dallas has more suites than Jacksonville, then they can make more money, and Jacksonville can figure out a way to build a different stadium with more suites, and they can make more money. Or if you sold more merchandise, if Dallas sells more merchandise than, I don't know, the Phoenix Cardinals, then Dallas can make more money from merchandise sales. They have other ways to make more individually in an entrepreneurial way than just TV and marketing, but there's a base foundation of money. We don't do that in college sports, and it's a mistake, in my opinion, that it's like you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. If we all did nationally, hey, here's Division I college football TV rights, and then we all got the same number, that would create parity, and that's what the NFL sees value in, is parity. That's why the Super Bowl champion is not rewarded with the first pick in the draft. They get the last pick in the draft. You won the Super Bowl, what do I get? You get the last pick. Yeah. It's part of creating parity. It's the money and the draft process to create. So now every single fan base thinks that every year could be their year. This could be our year. We got that quarterback back. He's healthy. And we just drafted that dynamic receiver. And oh my gosh, that defensive end, we traded for him. And wow, look at what we could be. But in college, we let greed get the best of us. And so each conference does their own TV deal. Right. That would be the equivalent of the NFC East doing a deal and the AFC West doing a deal, totally separate. That's what we do. And it's a problem because again, by no fault of their own, there's certain parts of the country that are just more heavily populated, and thus draw a better, television rating, which creates better value for them. Is it Wyoming's fault that they're in Wyoming? It's not their fault. It's a small population state. They get less money than Rutgers.
Something just does
I'm
not.
not sure Rutgers could beat Wyoming.
Yeah, something does not smell right here, and it's because things are happening behind closed doors, and no one knows what the hell's going on, and it's moving at an incredibly fast clip. I mean, I didn't know where Greg Sankey was. We might as well do a Where's Waldo right now. I mean, he's showing up in New York and L.A. and he's up in
That
Washington
dude
D.C.
travels a lot,
And I love Greg Sankey.
Yeah, great guy.
I think he's fantastic. I think he's the best guy in
Yeah,
college
great
football.
guy.
I really do with college sports. But it does seem like there's a lot of being things, and no one's having a say outside the Big Ten and the SEC. And all of a sudden, it's like next Tuesday we're having a meeting, and ESPN's going to be there.
Yeah,
Y'all want to show up? You can. Let you know it's 12 noon or Eastern time, and
yeah.
they're gonna put out this plan, but
Mhm.
it's not a plan to vote on. It's a done plan. It's like
Yeah,
this is
that's
how
what
it's
it
going to
is.
go down. Was
Yeah.
that what we're looking at?
Yeah, and our commissioner, Mike Oresco, is involved in those conversations. It's done at the commissioner level, and then they kind of disseminate that out to the ADs. Hey, this is what we're hearing. They'll tell you if there's something that's confidential, or if there is something they may not share. It depends on the nature of the subject, the topic itself. But yeah, the commissioners are involved in those.
Will any of the smaller schools have any say in what happens in this
No,
agreement?
no,
Okay.
not really.
That's what I thought. And again, maybe they don't deserve that for the good of college. You just have to hope that for the good of college sports as we know it,
Yeah.
that these guys are doing the right things. Because I mean, listen, you have to have the smaller guys in order to have the bigger guys, the big guys to have smaller guys. Because at one point, all these big guys were small guys at one point. They really
Sure.
were.
Yeah.
They really
Yeah,
were.
and Tulane used to be in the SEC, and
Yeah.
Georgia Tech used to be in the SEC, and that's the thing, man. All of these programs have highs and lows. Alabama, as great as they are, kind of have sort of mid '90s to early '05 ish. Whenever Coach Saban was hired, even and including his first year, that in football was a low point for them.
Yeah.
But they were great, and they had a low point. They're back to great, and this thing kind of happens. You look at how good Florida was
Mm-hmm.
in Steve Spurrier and Urban Meyer, but now they've had a decline. Well, it doesn't mean that they can't be great again.
Yeah.
And they're still competitive. They're just not at the top of the league, So it's just hard to be the best all the time, be the best.
And it's getting to the point where it's been a while too. I mean, 10, 11, 12, 13 years at any time when you haven't been tasting the fruits is a long time. He's Mark Ingram, the UAB athletic director. It's called the UAB Director's Chair. You can hear the show at least 5 days a week on the TKR app, wherever you get your favorite podcast, right here on our YouTube channel. And of course, we get some big things going to be happening a little bit later on this spring and summer with other sports for UAB. So we're really, really excited about that. And I'm just stoked beyond any comparison when it comes to the partnership we're going to have. I'm really excited about these things. Rock and roll news coming up here in a few seconds. I wanted to get into one final thing that I think is kind of interesting. I don't even know if you're able to take on it, but I saw something yesterday morning that evidently there is some spatting going on social media between Primetime and Shedeur, not between those two, but Shedeur and of course, Primetime, his dad, on the same page against a former player who is transferring out of Colorado. And basically, this player has come out and said, listen, Primetime basically just came in and said, listen, you're not going to be here, so it doesn't matter what you're going to do on the football field. So you might as well just pack your stuff up and leave. And he did that with a multitude of players. So they lost like 67 or 68 players or something like that. And that was
when he first got there.
Yeah, and that was the amazing thing because all these people transferred, right? They lost like more than half of their football team, and they ended up winning 3 of their first 4 ball games. Now we saw what happened for the rest of the season. It all
Yeah.
evened out, right? So it was a great story early in the season. Primetime was on television 24 hours a day. Where is he now? And so during this first offseason with Colorado, some of the former players are coming out saying, listen, he didn't give a squat about us. He didn't say, listen, I have an opportunity here and have a chance. Of course, a lot of people are saying that's sour grapes. This player, I think his name is Davis. He was all conference player in Austin P. He was the one that transferred to Colorado. Then once he got there, they said basically they put him in the back room and said, figure it out. You're not going to be here very long anyway. And he's like, dude, what happened? And they're putting it on primetime. And now, and I hate social media. I just do. It's a look at me situation. I understand why we have to have it in business. I love it in sports, and I do think it's very informative. But now you got Shador and this guy's got sour grapes. He's just pissed off because he's not good enough to play here. Blah 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 blah. Can you just talk a little bit about that? I know you're not a big social media guy, but for your head coach, I don't know if I'd call that first season at Colorado successful. If you wanted to call it a month into the season, yeah, it was really successful, but we saw
Yeah,
how it ended. And for anyone who thought that Colorado was going to end up being a bowl team, winning 10 games last year, you're crazy. They won one game the year before.
yeah,
You can't do it. And it was miraculous. We just found out some of the teams they beat early in the season weren't nearly as good as we thought.
yeah.
But can you just talk about that and what do you say as an athletic director to Coach Andy Kennedy and to Trent Dilfer about what they put out on social media?
Well, I think you know, you don't want to treat any player poorly, no matter how much they contribute or don't contribute. And I don't know that any of that what you said is accurate or not accurate. And you know, a lot of times players think they're treated poorly if they don't get to play because they thought they were going to play, and then they show up and there's a person that's just better than them that plays in front of them, and then they'll come up with all these reasons about how poorly they were treated when the reality is they just didn't get on the field. And
Yeah.
had they gotten on the field, they wouldn't feel like they were treated poorly, right?
Mhm.
It really is just about playing time. Um, we've had athletes transfer out of here saying that they're homesick, and it's like, well, you started last year, you weren't homesick then, and you got beat out this year, but all of a sudden you're homesick. You know, we've had that, and I say like everybody, we college athletics have that,
Sure.
and um, and so there's a resiliency issue on that topic, but the freedom to move around school to school now has changed the way athletes look at things, but it's changed the way the coaches have to look at it too. So for better or for worse, it's made the whole thing more transactional and not built on can you play here? Is this the right distance from home, the right fit? Is this university the right academic fit for what you want to do for the rest of your life? Is this environment the local community feel, big city or small town, whichever you know you have, is that right for you? Instead, it's just built totally on a transaction. How much money can the school pay you additional on top of
Mhm.
your scholarship through a collective? And then yeah, am I going to start immediately? I mean, players are just that they're asking that in recruiting. Am I going to start? Can you guarantee that I'm going to start? Well, no coach worth their salt could actually guarantee until you get there and show up and work out and now let's see, you know, how good you are against the competition. I don't know. I mean, I'm recruiting you because you show a lot of promise. There's certain qualities that you have that lead me to believe that you can contribute, but I'm not going to guarantee you unless our team is horrible, right? If our
Mhm.
team is horrible,
Yeah.
then I can say, oh yeah, you can definitely start because I can tell you're better than everything we got.
Yeah.
So, you know, the kids are asking that. And kids on their exit are also saying that. Like after the season, the kids that you currently have on your roster, I was second string coach last year. Are you going to guarantee now? I need to know now. Are you going to guarantee me to start? Because if not, I'm gonna get in the portal and see if I can make some money and go somewhere else. And you're like, well, you may go just be their backup the way you're our backup. I can't, you know, like you got to show up. I can't, if I guarantee you that you're going to start, odds are pretty decent that you're going to get kind of lazy on me in the spring. Like there's a hunger
Mhm.
that you
Yeah.
have to drive you to want to be the best. In the NFL, in pro sports, if you're not getting better, you're on your way out.
Yeah.
You know, because there's somebody behind you outworking you. They'll just cut you from the team, and you know they'll pay you what they're obligated to pay you, and that's
And,
yeah,
and,
it's
and
the way I
listen,
say.
maybe this is a story to put in the back of your hat for anyone that's thinking about transferring. Evidently, this kid is transferring from Austin P. He's going to Colorado, which is quite the jump. And he gets there, and everyone acts like they don't know who the guy is.
Mm,
And he's like, I was all conference Austin P. And so when he comes out on social media and says, I got here and did not feel like I was part of the Colorado Buffalo family, I wasn't
mm.
treated like the way I thought I was going to be treated, blah, 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 blah. And Coach Prime comes out and says, I don't even know who this guy is. I
Wow.
don't even know who this person is. When the
Well, I'd say that's
coach,
a problem. That's a problem. I mean, I'm assuming this guy's on a scholarship. He didn't go from Austin
yeah,
to Colorado to not at least be on his 85 scholarship. So
yeah,
I'd say that's a problem. But you were asking about Colorado. Look, if you remember, they have one of the best players in the game who plays both ways, wide
mhm,
receiver and corner. And that young man, and remember, he broke a rib, might have punctured a lung or something in a
yep,
game. And he missed kind of the middle part of the season. He's a real difference maker. I'll say this: forget about their record. And you say, was it? You said, you asked me, was it positive? I mean, the attention around that program is through the roof. The crowd's in-game atmosphere and crowd attendance wise through the roof. So I would say yes. Now they gotta produce wins, but in the short term, year one, I see, Deion Sanders on a ton of national ads, commercials, promoting
Subway,
himself.
yeah.
But even like on the Aflac commercial, he gets to bring a buffalo in. So that's not a Colorado. He's not wearing
True.
Colorado
Yeah.
gear, right? But he has that whole one, and he brings the buffalo in and into the office. Like, that's promoting the school
Yeah.
indirectly. So it's good. And the more he's out there, the more it associates him.
I guess my
for
point
him
is he
with
can
their
do that.
school.
He can do that for as long as he's allowed to win 3 or 4 games a year, and they keep him.
Well, that's not going to
You
last
know,
forever. You can't
yeah.
win 3 games a year or 4
Yeah.
games a year and keep your job very long. But I would say the short term is they probably made a lot more money in ticket sales, and their attendance was up, and
Yeah.
the interest is up. So now, how can we take that, turn that into having the right players and, coaching them up, lining them up, and out scheming the other team? They still got to do that.
Yeah.
So,
I want to take you back to 1984. How old were you?
11.
11 years old. All right. I'm going to give you a list of classic rock bands. Every one of these bands was touring in 1984. It's really amazing. And I'm bringing this up because there were more bands touring in 1984 than any other year in classic rock history.
Okay.
AC/DC, Aerosmith, Beach Boys, Blue Oyster Cult, Cheap Trick, Clapton, Elvis Costello, Deep Purple, Def Leppard, Bob Dylan, Sammy Hagar, Hart, Joan Jett, Billy Joel, Judas Priest, Kansas, Metallica, Night Ranger, Robert Plant, The Pretenders, Queen, Red Hot Chili Peppers, REO Speedwagon, Santana, Scorpions, Bruce Springsteen, Stray Cats, George Thorogood. Yes, every one of those bands was touring in 1984. They had not started touring yet, but they were fixing to go 1985. Okay, and you could throw in Van Halen, but there's a reason why I didn't throw in Van Halen. You know why?
Do tell.
Because every one of these bands is touring in 2024.
Yeah, you know what? I knew you were going there, because
Yeah.
as you were saying that, I was like, I think most of them are still touring. And I wasn't sure of all, but I thought most of them are. I mean, Queen is with Adam Lambert, right? But still, I mean,
Van Halen's not. Van Halen's not, and that's why they're not
they're
on this
not.
list.
No, Sammy is. Yep.
Van Halen, Elvis Costello, Eric Clapton, Bruce Springsteen. I'm looking at this list. I'm going, the Pretenders, Robert Plant, Night Ranger. Night Ranger's playing, by the way, Alpharetta, Georgia, I think, in a couple of weeks. So I'm going to take everything I got, not to put my jimbers on ahead over there. And
When we were out at the NIT in Las Vegas a year ago, the NIT championship, Night Ranger was playing at some hotel. I just saw a flyer about Night Ranger.
I love them, man. I love them. I love them. I mean, it's the original band, man. It's the original band. I mean, I just love them. All right, so that wasn't what I was going to test you on. So with Valentine's Day several weeks ago, and we have Mother's Day coming up here on May 12th. I know you're going to take care of Mama Ingram. You're going to take care of her. I was thinking about love, and I saw this great article. I interviewed John McEnroe 5 or 6 weeks ago. We did a podcast here on Tony Curry Radio. He's part of that senior thing, and I got an opportunity to interview him. And I wanted to interview John, not so much for John, but for his wife. You know who his wife is? Patty Smythe.
Okay.
The lead singer of Scandal.
Yeah.
And she was also, and I asked him this question point, and I had to ask him off air if it was okay to ask questions about his wife, because they've been married for 26 years. They're very, very private. They just recently were on a red carpet thing of the Vanity Fair party a couple weeks ago. They just don't go out in public. They just don't do it. They're very family oriented, but yet they've been married for 26 years. She was offered the job to be the lead singer for Van Halen before Sammy Hagar was.
Really? Never heard that before.
I knew that, but I was going to ask him because I wanted to, because obviously, if you were asked to be the lead singer of Van Halen, there was only up. I mean, even if they were horrible with the new lead singer, if Sammy didn't even fit, everybody wanted to know first of all, you had David Lee Roth doing his own thing, and you had, Alex and those guys doing, and you wanted to find out who was going to be best on their own, right? You wanted to see if New England was going to be better without Tom Brady, or Tom Brady was going to be better without New England. We just love that.
Yeah.
And so, but you knew the trajectory of that, whoever was going to be taking the lead singer, and the fact that she could be a lead singer female of a rock band that's had a male dominant
Real
garage.
testosterone kind of
Yeah,
driven.
yeah, misogynistic. I mean, it just
Yeah.
would have been an amazing thing to hear.
Yeah.
And so she turned down that gig because she's like, I'm not going to be on the road for 220 nights a year. I've got a family. And I just don't want to do it right now.
Wow.
And they basically said, listen, if you don't do it, this is it. I mean, it's not like we can come back to you in 5 or 6 years, because we're not changing out singers again.
Sure.
This is it. And she said, no, thanks, but no thanks. And they're like totally cool. So I asked them about that. It was pretty amazing. So I started going through some rock and rollers. Pat Benatar was one of these people that she was on top of the world, Shadows in the Night, Love is the Battlefield. And all of a sudden had a baby and decided, you know what, I'm going to take a few years off and I'm going to wrap it up. By the way, Patti Smythe just came out with an album about 3 years ago. She's back on the road again.
Wow.
She hadn't anything out since like 1993. So I wanted to go through a list of rock and rollers and their famous spouses. So I want to throw out rock and rollers. I want you to name their famous spouse if you can.
Okay.
Eddie Van Halen.
Valerie Bertinelli.
Gene Simmons.
Um,
A lot of people don't know her, but if you saw her picture, you know.
I know who she is. Shannon Tweed.
Shannon Tweed, very, very good. Tommy Lee.
Pamela Anderson.
Pamela Anderson and
Heather Locklear.
yes. Richie Sambora.
Didn't he also marry Heather Locklear?
Yes. Oh, we mentioned Patty. You're doing good. Patty Smythe and John McEnroe. Greg Allman.
I don't know.
He was married to Cher for 7 days. I've interviewed Greg Allman about 17,000 times, and every time they're like, "Please do not ask him any questions about Cher." I'm like, "Dude, it's been 50
That's
years.
number
I don't
one.
even know."
That's coming out. That's the first one.
Billy Joel,
Christy Brinkley,
Paul Simon. I forgot about this one, to be honest with you. So if you don't get this right.
I've forgotten it too. I know it.
Carrie Fisher.
Yeah.
Of Star Wars.
Yeah.
Another one. This is one of those like, what in the world? How is it even possible? Neil Young. He's married to her right now.
I don't know.
Daryl Hannah. Neil Young is married to Daryl Hannah. That's one of those marriages where you just, and of course, I got an opportunity to interview Jackson Brown about a week and a half after she accused him of, she had the black eye and the busted lip and everything. And here's a soft spoken, here come those tears again. You're like, there's no way Jackson Brown can hurt her, right?
Yeah.
And of course, his way of mode of operandi was like, I'm not saying a word about it. I'm not going to defend myself because it's not true. And so, and I remember interviewing him for like an hour and a half, and he just talked and talked and talked and talked and talked. He didn't tell me anything, but he's like, obviously it's not true. But yeah, she's always been just a huge Neil Young fan, and there you go. She's married to him. Chris Robinson, Black Crowes.
Yeah. It's Goldie Hawn's daughter.
You're right, Kate Hudson.
Kate Hudson, thank you.
Pamela Anderson. You mentioned one already. Pamela was with Tommy Lee, and who was the other guy she's with?
Yeah, I've forgotten.
Kid Rock.
I didn't realize they were married.
Yeah,
Okay.
they sure were. Keith Urban.
Yeah. Nicole Kidman.
Okay, then you're doing very, very well, by the way. Blake Shelton.
Blake Shelton. He's currently with Gwen Stefani, but he was with
yes,
that
right.
other country singer.
I'm blown away that you've drilled this. The final one, John Mellencamp, and I had forgotten about this one as well.
The Cougs.
John Mellencamp.
I've forgotten.
Meg Ryan.
There
you go.
Yeah.
Some of your rock and rollers. You knocked that out of the park.
I thought you were going with great Mother's Day songs, and what better way to wake up your wife, the mother of your children, than with the song "Mother" by Glenn Danzig.
Yeah. I was going to say Tie Your Mother Down from Queen, which is another one of my favorite mother songs. Well, we got a few weeks before Mother's Day. I didn't want to get too far ahead. We got 10 days before Mother's Day. So
Yeah. There's a Guns N' Roses song. I used to love her, but I had to kill her.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And now we're happier that way. That's and now we're happier that way.
Exactly. All right, my man. UABsports.com. Check out their website for everything you need about UAB sports. I can't believe it's already May. Spring games going on. College football right around the corner. Basketball season. It's just over, but it seems like we're going to be having. Recruiting is already starting up. It's going to be unbelievable. So we're looking forward to that. Thank you so much, and we'll catch up next week.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Curry Radio.